this episode of the Top Times Podcast, we have Professor Krisler. We really enjoyed this interview. Professor Krisler, we connected because she had a post. We reposted it, and then a few parents hit us back and were saying, hey, this was great information. We'd love to be able to teach our kids this stuff earlier. So we decided to give her a platform to share what it is that she does. So in addition to being a professor, she's also executive functioning coach. And so that is some of the information she was able to give us. She gave us contact information. We really enjoyed this interview. We hope you do as well.
I'm Krisler, and I am a professor. Right now, I teach at TCU, but I've been teaching for 23 years now. I also do executive function coaching, and I'm a certified health coach as well. So most of my clients are teenagers and young adults. And so, yeah, I love just helping teens and young adults with wrapping up high school successfully, transitioning to college, making it through college well, all of that. That's really what my focus is on.
Okay. Now with the executive functioning coaching, now I know that's big because we have a lot of teenagers that their decision making isn't exactly on point.
Yes.
Um, to put it lightly. So what is it that you do with them? How does that benefit them, and how is that something that's really great for them in terms of transitioning from high school to college?
Yeah, well, executive functioning is something I think a lot of people hear in relation to things like ADHD or autism, but it's actually something that every single person uses. We all have these cognitive processes that we use to help us make decisions, to help us process information. So for the teens and young adults, yes, they do struggle in this area. Partly because they haven't really been given the opportunities to develop these skills. A lot of our teens and young adults have been protected. Their decisions have been made for them. They haven't had a lot of chance to make mistakes and sort of learn how to navigate through that. So, when I work with them, it really depends on what we do, really depends on where they're at. So we always start with a long conversation of who they are, where they're at in their education, what their experience was prior, what their personal concerns are, what their goals are. And then we talk about how to get there. So it's creating practical action steps. And it's a lot of times it's just really basic things that again, they haven't done for themselves. So time management is a huge one because somebody has always been managing their schedule. It's always been a parent or a grandparent or somebody who has done it for them. And so now, especially for the college students, they're on their own trying to figure out, well, when do I eat? This is my class schedule and it's kind of all over the place. So when do I eat? When do I study? What's the best time for me to go to bed? And we talk about those kinds of things and figure out how to work that all into their schedule. There's other things like organization and thinking about how they process information, just their emotional regulatory, regulating their emotions, just thinking about if they're very spontaneous and they are able to go with the flow, if they need a structure, what does that look like? There's just so many things wrapped up with executive functioning.
That's awesome. And so what are some things that even, when I think about a student athlete, and we've heard a lot of athletes that we've talked to on the podcast say, it took them getting involved in something extra to kind of help them navigate the time management. So would you say that students getting involved in something else to kind of help them manage their time even more to be to participate and other things is a good way to go, or would that just depend on the student in itself? Of course, navigating those basic life skills first, and then transitioning into things that could help them with time management and things like that.
It really depends. A lot of student athletes prior, in high school, they were monitored a lot more. And so what I would say is if they're currently in high school and they are dealing with all of that monitoring, is they need to start learning how to do that monitoring for themselves. So if that is learning how to use a planner, a written planner is typically what I advise, but even a digital planner, Google Calendar, something like that. They need to start getting into the habit of that, learning how to utilize that. The athletes that I see, my students specifically, a lot of them just really are so heavily focused on their sport because they're so busy. If they're in season, they're missing a lot of class. So I would say not necessarily adding to something, adding an activity, but again, trying to figure out where they're going to fit in the study time. Where are they going to fit in going to see their professors? If they've missed class, how are they going to get that information? Yes, there are athletic advisors. There are people who a lot of times will monitor them and things like that to make sure their grades are staying where they need to be for eligibility, but they're not necessarily coaching them to be self-sufficient. They are monitoring them to make sure their grades stay up. And that is a totally different thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Like we both played college sports. So I understand like that part. When we came, I played football and ran track. What we had was called a study table. So that was something to help us monitor our time. So for everybody, when you came in your freshman year, that first semester, you were on study table. Regardless of who you were, what you thought your grades were, how smart you were on study table. Every day after practice, you were there for 2 hours, if not 3 hours, depending. And they just kind of went from there to help then. But then if you had a certain GPA, you could get off the study table. And what I saw when a lot of kids got off that study table, they started to have this huge fluctuation in their grades. Because like what you were saying, they have trouble managing their time, making sure that they're, doing things in a timely fashion. Because the thing that caught me about your post is that you were talking about how, kids are used to retakes and turning in things late and like getting multiple opportunities to take a test and all that type of stuff. And I mean, it's never worked that way in college. It's like this is big boy, big girl world, right? And so that was a big thing. And I know a lot of kids, especially like, well, we coach quite a few kids from a bunch of different schools because we coach with the club as well. And so we get to see how some of those kids are like monitoring just how they deal with stuff in practice. It takes them an extra long time to put their shoes on. Like if they have no concept of time whatsoever, you're like, where'd this come from? Like,
yeah. Something else I see too with athletes is the ones that were athletes in high school that are no longer athletes in college. That's a big shift for them too. I'm currently coaching a young man who was a swimmer. And so he did it all throughout high school, and he, was a captain later on in his high school, on his high school swim team. And so he was constantly being monitored by his parents. He was like, my grandmother was checking in on me, my coaches checked in, everybody was watching him and making sure he stayed where he needed to be in terms of his grades. Then he got to college, he's no longer swimming, and he's really not even exercising that much. And that was something that he missed. He wanted to be able to work out. And so just trying to figure out how to put in that exercise time for him that he wanted to, while also maintaining his study time and making sure he was getting to class and all of that. So, back to what you mentioned about adding something in, that could be where if somebody was an athlete and now they aren't in college, maybe they join an intramural team or they start a club that is, of former athletes or something like that, where they can have time to exercise and sort of keep up their physical health. And that certainly works with their mental health as well. So that could even be an area in terms of, athletes and kind of where there may be some things that differ for them.
But I like what you say that it's also an eye opener because, when we work with our athletes, we want to instill in them things that are life skills that they can take beyond the track and the field, and recognizing that as much as we're helping them, and I like the words you use about monitoring, sometimes that can be a hindrance. And I think now in this day and age, as much as we're wanting to support them, sometimes that can be too much of a crutch if it becomes well, we're stepping in and doing things that they should do to ensure that they're advocating for themselves in high school so that when they do get to college and we're not there, then they're
Mm-hmm.
able to do those things without it. So what would you say are some tools that even for parents and coaches, right, that they can use even at practice or ensuring that our athletes are being more independent in advocacy? Because those are things that we push. Like, hey, if you need to study and you're not going to come out to practice today, that's okay. Your studies are more important, but not every, coach is created equal. Not every team, not every school is created equal. So just wanting the viewers to understand some things that they can equip themselves with to kind of
Mm-hmm.
stand apart and be able to monitor themselves and take some ownership in it.
Yeah, I think, and I will say this too. I am a parent, and so I understand how hard it is when you have a kid and you're like, just do the work, or why aren't you turning in your homework, or where are these grades coming from? I totally get it. I have a 13-year-old. He just finished eighth grade, and none of his teachers have ever said, I don't think he's on the level of this, or, he's not really capable. Like, they all say he's very bright and he totally gets it, but, there's some things. And so I understand this as a parent. So I just want to let anybody who's listening know
Yes.
that I'm just not speaking
Right.
these words,
Absolutely.
like
Absolutely.
telling you what to do, because I am in the thick of it.
Mm-hmm.
But as a parent, one of the things I really try to do is help my son understand why I'm doing these things, or why it's important for him to um, even do the work when he may not necessarily get credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
So he would always be like, well, the deadline's passed. And I'm like, well, but you can still do the practice. You can
Right.
still do the work. It's important for you to understand how to, do these foundational things. So, doing those types of things, helping them understand that it's not about the perfection. A's do not mean a whole lot sometimes. We love to see A's, and that's great. But what is it really about the work? What are you learning? How are you processing? And I even think sometimes just being curious about your kid and asking questions, and not what were you thinking kind of questions. Like, I noticed that you're struggling with this. Can you tell me, what this assignment is? Can you explain it to me? And ask them questions just to be curious about what they're doing. Again, I get it. It's hard because you want to be like, just do the ding dang assignment. But they may not even know, especially given their age and maturity and experience, they may not really be able to answer your question the way you want to. So get curious, find out about whatever it is. Help them practice those life skills that they're going to need in college or
Mm-hmm.
beyond. So, and this is not just with school, this is with banking, for example. Knowing how to budget is important. And
Mm-hmm.
so, sitting them down, and if they get an allowance, or if you allow them to earn money somehow, or if they have a job, helping them, walking them through creating a budget, sitting down and showing them a calendar and saying, this would be great for you to use. What would you like to try? Would you rather try a paper calendar or a digital calendar? And
Mm-hmm.
actually walk them through the process. When they're having to go to the doctor, having them make the appointment. Now, you can be sitting right there next to them,
Right.
right? So that if they are not sure about a date, or if they get asked a question that they're not sure about, right, you can help monitor that and kind of walk them through it. But
Mm-hmm.
let them go through some of those really uncomfortable moments, so that when they are on their own in college, they've already experienced some of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're not constantly call, what's my social security number? What's my doctor?
Right.
What's my insurance card? You don't need to go through all that, right? Start little by little, sort of stepping back out of the way and letting them take the initiative. Let them do things. And when they make a mistake, let them know, yeah, that was a mistake, but also help them learn from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So those moments are what really helps a student kind of not, it helps them to thrive versus just get by and being able to kind of switch off what we do as parents. We're parents too, where it's just like, okay, just do it. But that makes sense, giving them that independence and stepping back a bit and helping them to understand, right? And explain this is why I'm having you do this. So
Yeah.
later when I'm not in your ear, you'll be able to thrive
Yes.
when you are away from me. So no,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. We all, want to stay connected with our child's teacher, which
Mhm.
I'm all for that. What happens if your child doesn't get the grade that they wanted on a test or an assignment, or if there's an issue that, needs to be talked through with the teacher? Allow for your child to send the email, right? Allow for your child to ask the question of, can you give me more feedback on this assignment? Or can I go over that test? Because then in college, they're going to be in a similar situation and they need to be able to say, Professor so and so, can I come to your office hours? Can I
Mhm.
go over that test? Will you give me some feedback? So if they've had a little bit of that practice prior, with you kind of sitting and going over with them maybe what to say or how to walk through that, then later when they're on their own,
Right.
they'll feel more comfortable doing it.
And that's great. And then that brings up you taking an even step further as an athlete, right? You have to be a lot more vocal because you're going to be missing class. And if that professor or faculty member doesn't know you and then you don't know how to communicate, then you're really stuck like Chuck if your grade begins to slip.
Mm-hmm.
Then so that's really important to add that as a life skill for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to just back up a quick second. You were talking about executive function and the kid who was the swimmer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I have kids who have that difficulty in terms of executive functioning. And one of the things I recommend is like movement, like first thing in the morning. It like
Mm-hmm.
helps them like reset themselves, burn up some of that extra energy, and they're able to focus and concentrate a little bit better. Do you have any like experience with that in terms of helping those college kids or with that and doing something like that?
Yeah, that's actually an excellent recommendation to get up and get moving. And I would say carry that throughout the day. One of the things that students try to do is they try to study for long periods of time, and that is not going to get you very far. So breaking the time up, getting, moving in the morning, getting your brain going, getting sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning wakes you up, and it works with your circadian rhythm, with your biological clock. So getting sunshine in your eyes in the morning helps your body to know, okay, it's time to be up and be awake. But also, that is something that helps prepare you for bed at night, because that then sets off serotonin, which then helps with melatonin. So you're not just, getting sunlight in your eyes, but you're actually helping yourself for multiple things throughout the day. So that movement and being outside is so important. But, studying in small increments and getting movement in between. So, a 30-minute session and then breaking for 5 to 10 minutes and maybe walking around, taking a lap around the library, or, taking a quick walk on campus, or if you live at home, your commuter student, walking your dog. Whatever that is, that movement is really important. It resets you. It gives your brain a break, kind of gives you some downtime. It actually will help kind of set in what you've been thinking about, what you've been processing, what you've been studying over. So your memory, it will help kind of solidify your memory on what you just worked on. So yeah, movement is really important.
Yeah. Now, have you heard of the Pomodoro clock?
I don't think I have.
It's a little, I don't know if you can see it. It's like a little, can you see a little square?
Mhm.
Okay, yes.
And it has the different times. You can set that. So something I do with people I work with, I have them set the clock for it's a 50 minutes or 25 minutes. You work for that time.
Hmm.
It'll go off. You flip it. It'll be like a 10-minute rest or 50 or a 5-minute rest. Move around and then flip it back and keep working. it's a great way to help like people who sit all day and people who work constantly and try to work for like long stretches of time. It doesn't necessarily it goes right in hand with what you were saying, talking about movement helps you solidify what you were just studying or what you're just
Mm-hmm.
working on. So that's something else you may want to add to the repertoire of what you do. I also health coach and I'm a
Oh,
chiropractor, so
okay.
I get
Yeah.
exactly where you're going with this. So so it's a
Yeah.
lot of the same things in there. And then, you know, and I have a same deal with my student. My daughter, she would not turn in stuff, and I'm like, well, what's the problem? And then, you know, you go through your line of questioning and you discover, well, he's not my favorite teacher.
Yeah.
Never, not a good choice at all. However, if
Right.
that's what you feel your justification is, we'll have to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really good point is motivation.
Hmm.
You know, the lack of motivation sometimes is what students struggle with. Getting to class, doing the assignment, going to office hours, you know, they don't feel like it. Well, you know what? I don't feel like cleaning toilets all the time. I don't feel like going grocery shopping. I don't feel like cooking dinner 6 nights a week, but it is part of something that I've built in to my daily and weekly schedule. And so that goes back to the importance of a routine, right? You build it in and you become disciplined at it. And so the times when when you don't feel like it, because I'm sure there are times athletes don't necessarily feel like going to practice, but
Hmm.
because it is a part of their routine, they just consistently do it.
Well,
I,
Professor,
oh, yes.
we appreciate you joining us.
Yes,
We're running to the
absolutely.
end of our time. We know there's, if people wanted to work with you, I mean, a lot of people who graduating or people who are in first year of college, that a lot of them watch the podcast. Are there any tips or anything that they can do to work with you directly, kind of helping them out along the way, even through high school, finishing up high school and transitioning into college?
Yes, I do work one-on-one with clients. I also have a course. I actually have two courses. One that I did myself, it's called Ace Your First Year. And then another one that I did with a health coaching a colleague. She actually coaches teens and she specializes in teen athletes. And that one is called Thrive 101, and it is a college wellness program. So they could, you know, if people are interested, they can look into the courses or they can work with me. You can either go to my website, which is coachingwithkrisler.com. And I suggest everybody follow me on Instagram because it's a platform where you can get lots of free information. And so there's that as well.
Awesome.
We
Thank you
appreciate you
so
joining us.
much.
Appreciate your time.
Yes. Yes. And thank you for all the work you're doing with the students. I know it's making a huge difference and a huge impact. And so you're chipping away and helping for sure.
Yeah, slowly but surely we're
Yes,
getting there.
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.